we are here representing and giving you an introduction to the Child Advocacy Centers and Special Investigation Unit of Windsor County. And we have 4 core members of that team here today to start off what we hope will be a series embraced by the Community Access TV audience on the work that we do in responding to allegations of child sexual abuse, child serious physical abuse, and sexually based offenses against adults. We can start with Martha to introduce herself, and then we can move into a history of where we started.
My name is Martha Neary, and I currently work in about my 3rd year as the designated forensic interviewer. So my role is, for the most part, interviewing alleged victims of sexual and or physical abuse.
Good morning, I'm Chief Caston with the Hartford Police Department, and we're a partner with the Special Investigations Unit, not only in working with the SIU board, but also in having an investigator assigned to the unit.
I'm Julie Gaudette. I'm the director of the Child Advocacy Centers and Special Investigation Unit of Windsor County.
Special Investigations Unit started in Vermont up in Chittenden County. Bill Sorrell, when he was the state's attorney up in Chittenden County, had the idea of putting a specialized unit together to investigate state sex crimes. That unit ended up having advantages of specialization. Prior to that time, sex crimes were often investigated by the social worker and the trooper du jour, and those people did not have training or specialization in talking with children. Once the Special Investigations Unit in Chittenden started, you had people who specialized in a particular form of interviewing and investigation when it came to sex crimes. There was not the political will to take Special Investigations Units statewide. I was in the legislature in the early 2000s. Michael Vinton and I had proposed a bill to take them statewide, and there weren't the funds available to do so. With the tragic killing of Brooke Bennett at the hands of Michael Jakes, the legislature reviewed how sex crimes were handled. And as it turned out, Michael Jakes had had 3 prior prosecutions involving other victims. The legislature looked at how those were handled, why he got reasonably lenient sentences, and concluded that if we better investigated sex crimes, that we would be able to prosecute them more efficiently. We now have a specialized investigations unit in Windsor County, and that gives us some advantages in terms of putting solid cases together. We have a specialized forensic interviewer who knows how to interview children in an age-appropriate manner, and she's able to interview in a way that those interviews come into evidence in a criminal prosecution. If those interviews are not done the right way, if they're not done using open-ended questions, judges won't allow those interviews to come into evidence. We also have a multidisciplinary team. That team enables all partners to be able to talk about cases. The state's attorney's office, DCF, probation, and the police all get together once a month with the SIU staff and talk about cases. It gives us better information about victims, perpetrators, and witnesses in our cases. I believe that the SIU structure that we have now has enabled us to better serve and prepare better cases for prosecution.
So the Special Investigation Unit in Windsor County was originally developed in July of 2009 with regard to the state mandate. However, we really didn't get started up and running, forming a team, having an office, and establishing protocols until January of 2010. That being said, the organizational structure of the Windsor County SIU and its child advocacy centers is that of the Family Place located in Norwich. We have a child advocacy center where we do the interviewing of children and provide referrals and services at that location in Norwich, as well as another child advocacy center in North Springfield, Vermont, to serve the folks of southern Windsor County. We also have our office here at White River, where we're co-located with the state's attorney's office and victim advocate in order to have that free flow of information as Michael described. What we know about child sexual abuse and physical abuse is that 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. Only 1 in 10 will ever tell. We know this based on information that's been gathered by the CDC and through adult survivor victims. Our Special Investigation Unit has also expanded to respond to all allegations of sexual offenses against adults. And we've seen an increase in many victims coming forward knowing that there is a new response to how we interview victims, how we provide services, having a dedicated team of detectives that are trained to not only understand sexual assault and the trauma that is affiliated with it, but how to ask questions and how to approach victims and how to look at cases a little bit differently. Our protocols throughout the county are guided by the multidisciplinary team that assembles these protocols and our board of directors that adopts and approves these protocols. The board of directors is a group that can have as many as 21 members. We're currently about 15, 16 strong, in which case these are heads of agencies, our key partners, chiefs of police, directors of DCF, directors of Department of Corrections. Michael is the chair, state's attorney. And we meet once a month as well. Our mission is to provide a coordinated response, a response that spans 8 disciplines. We have the SIU CAC staff, including the forensic interviewer, myself, and the program coordinator. We have folks from Department of Corrections, dedicated DCF investigators, dedicated detectives throughout the county in Vermont, Windsor County, mental health professionals, and a memorandum of understanding with the Child Advocacy Protection Program at the Children's Hospital at Dartmouth, where all of our kids can be seen by a program that specializes in and has the board subspecialty of child sexual abuse and physical abuse examinations.
So following up on some of what Michael and Julie have talked about, I currently am the dedicated forensic interviewer, but prior to taking this position, I worked within the state's attorney's office as one of the designated special investigation prosecutors that prosecuted or tried to prosecute sex crimes against children and adults. And actually, even prior to that, worked as a public defender, sometimes representing children who had been victims of physical and or sexual abuse, and also representing people who were accused of perpetrating those offenses against children. So I did come to this role with a lot of experience in some of the difficulties that we've seen in this county in particular with proving and prosecuting those cases. And I think part of what Michael is saying is oftentimes if it is a sex crime with a child victim, the case often will come down to the word of the child against the word of the adult. And it puts child victims in a horrific position, having already been the victim of significant sexual or physical trauma, to then be forced to confront that person in a courtroom, to talk about those things in front of people that they don't know. And it became clear, I would say many years ago, it took a while for us to get to this point, but it became very clear that to ask a child to do that was further victimizing the child, and that if there was any way that we could put supports around that child and also get that evidence in a more in a less traumatizing way for the child, that our chances of successfully holding the perpetrator accountable would be increased. And so as part of my history in Windsor County, I had always advocated to have somebody that was a designated interviewer. Michael's predecessor, Bobby Sand, was on board with that idea, and he worked very hard at trying to get a special investigation unit put together during his time as state's attorney, and also worked with the state of Vermont on a pilot for a designated interviewer. Part of what is important about our unit at this point is that we have, as Julie and Michael said, put together a team of people who we work together consistently. We have victim advocates from WISE that we work with regularly who have an understanding now, particularly with adult survivors, that the response that those victims will get in terms of the investigation of those offenses is very different. The interviews that we have been able to conduct with many of those adult victims have looked very different, not having to happen in a hospital or a police station, and having somebody that is not in uniform with a gun talking to them. I think all of those factors have helped more survivors feel comfortable coming forward to talk about what's happened to them. We have dedicated victim advocates within the state's attorney's office who have been very proactive in their involvement in supporting victims through the process. We have a designated mental health clinician that works at the family place who is also part of our regular team, who is able to provide counseling and support for victims through the process. And so in addition to having the investigation piece sort of come together in a better way, we do have more systems and people who are specialized in this field supporting the victim through the process, because often that prosecution process can go on for a long time, and it's really hard to keep the victim and his or her family invested in that, and we do the best that we can to support them throughout that time. So we really have come a long way, and we are looking forward to continuing in our work.
The uniqueness of the Special Investigations Unit here in Windsor County, while a newer concept to Vermont, is not necessarily so uncommon outside of Vermont, and it's been something that's been moving across the country for a number of years now, because as you've heard, there's two key issues that are just very, very important. First and foremost is working with the victims and the families, which are very unique in this case, particularly when you're working with children and trying to investigate crimes, traumatic crimes, if you will, involving children. But of equal importance, and probably even greater when we talk about holding people accountable that are responsible for those crimes, is the investigation. Teamwork is so important, and the SIU is about teamwork. Law enforcement officers in general are not equipped to handle such detailed investigations, and it's so important that we work together with our partners that have an expertise in those areas. And what we bring together is a police, prosecutor, and advocacy team that can take the case from investigation all the way through the preparation process to prosecution, and provide some support even after that, not only to the victim, but also to the family. I've been very, very honored to have our staff as part of the SIU and to work with the SIU board on continuing to grow the services and improve the services that we provide to the residents of Windsor County and the communities that we serve. We do have an investigator that is assigned full-time to work with the unit, and they have benefited immensely from the training that they've received, but I think of equal importance is what they brought back to the remainder of our staff, and that's understanding that one, the teamwork approach, and two, that there's empathy and compassion that we work with all of our victims, that we're able to bring in any investigation that we do, but particularly to the sensitive investigations involving child abuse, child sexual assault. The SIU follows the national model with standards promulgated by the National Children's Alliance. These are the best practices that are put together not only by law enforcement, but again, the team approach, prosecutors, medical practitioners, representatives from the judiciary and the education sector to ensure that our investigators and our team are moving forward in everyone's best interest in a manner that will ensure the greatest of success, not only in prosecution, but hopefully holding the offender accountable and restoring our victim and helping them return and feel whole after this experience.
The Family Place in Norwich was selected as the host agency for the Special Investigation Unit because of the fact that it had already had experience with the Child Advocacy Center model since 2000, actually slightly before that. And in their 10 years, they served many, many child victims of northern Windsor and southern Orange County. And so there was already a partial team assembled and protocols that were in existence for us to build on to be able to offer a similar model with the Child Advocacy Center that we opened down in North Springfield to serve the southern population of Windsor County. Windsor County is the largest geographically in the state of Vermont. We have 9 police departments and 2 Vermont State Police barracks and 2 Department of Children and Family Services offices, one in Hartford and one in Springfield. At one point in time, we had as many as 26 people that were trained to do interviews of children. And while we were never at a shortage in terms of having someone who could conduct the interview, the quality of the interviews were very inconsistent, and which helped us to make the decision to pilot and get the state's support to pilot the forensic interviewer model in Vermont, or for Vermont, excuse me. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on numbers as well. We talked a little bit about the statistics, but since 2000, given the Family Place CAC, opening the Special Investigation Unit in 2010, starting the Child Advocacy Center down in Springfield at the tail end of this summer in 2010, we have served over 1,300 victims of child and or adult sexual abuse. So as I had mentioned, we'd like to use what we're airing not only as an online tool for those that are coming in and out of the unit, but we also want to educate the community about the fact that we exist. And so it's really important for us to have feedback from your viewers in terms of what kind of information you would like to hear. For me, I feel like one of the unknowns when someone makes a report of child abuse is what happens next and where does it go. So what we'd like to offer through this series is a lens into the process, and you'll have an opportunity to hear from DCF and law enforcement investigators, from victim advocates. We're hoping with your feedback and with the information that we share that we can broaden the vision of how we respond to these allegations throughout Windsor County.
If you believe or you know of someone that has been the victim of abuse, sexual assault, or neglect, please call the Department of Children and Family Services hotline to access our services or your local law enforcement agency by calling 1-800-649-5285. That'll put you in touch with an operator at Department of Children and Family Services 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.